Good answer?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, November 19th meeting of the Trinidad Planning Commission. We will begin tonight with a roll call.
Commissioner Slade.
I'm here.
Commissioner Cole.
Present.
Commissioner Hickman.
I'm here.
Commissioner R.F. Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner R.S. Johnson.
Here. All right, sorry, approval of the minutes. There are minutes from August 20th, which I need to recuse myself from being absent. But anything from those, let's see, RF, the Johnsons and Slay.
I think you can probably assume as much based on the fact that Richard's being asked to sign this document, but I think it's probably worth mentioning that Richard presided over the meeting in the absence of the chair and vice chair. I did a little bit of research and I think maybe we should add the following statement. In the absence of the chair and vice chair, and by informal consensus, Commissioner R.F. Johnson served as acting chair.
Good, yeah. I don't have an official thing up, I guess, because I'll play it. So.
Yeah.
Any other changes from the Johnsons? Right. We'll approve the August 20th.
Oh, I'm apologize.
So please.
I did have a question. On page 3, the third paragraph or second full paragraph where it says they asked about how wetlands are categorized. The point there being is that Roland asked why one should assume that the drainage channel was related to highway construction. And then Parker briefly explained how agencies define wetland and confirmed that the drainage channel could be seen in aerial photos prior to the highway construction. The way I interpret that is that the drainage was there before the construction. So when we make a statement that we assume that the drainage channel is related to the highway construction, it's kind of incongruous to me. I don't quite understand
It would
that.
be the wetland is related to the highway construction. So the highway construction cut off the drainage channel of the creek.
Okay, so I just wanted to. Thank you very much. Sorry.
It was a.
And yeah, we didn't discuss that at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is.
Construction cut off the drainage.
Yeah, what you stated.
Yeah.
That change your. Or
If I change drainage channel to wetland.
I think your statement would be sufficient, right? Yeah.
So with that revision, I will move to accept the bids.
I'll second.
there.
I
Okay. We'll take it and abstain. All right, moving on to the next set of minutes, which were the September 17th. With one Johnson present for this one. Any changes on these minutes that anybody saw? They jumped out at me when I.
Yeah, there's an incomplete sentence on packet page 8 where we were discussing packet page 13. That says Slay suggested cats. Not all of what we were discussing, but I don't think it was cats.
What did you mean by pat? Tip for or tip for tat? However you know.
Just delete that because I was trying to shorten. I just summarize some stuff instead of having all the details. So
we defer these to the next one so you can go back to the tapes? Or
either I delete it or we delete whichever.
I think we can delete it. It was probably about aircraft.
so deleting the line Slay suggested tat. All right. Any other changes? All right, move to approve those minutes with that change. So moved. Okay, move and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, Richard.
I will abstain.
All right, perfect. Brings us to tonight's agenda. Any changes to the agenda for tonight? Just to the 2 items on there. Line in the room or up here. To approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And sorry, items from the floor. We're now going to open up for items from the floor. It's an opportunity for members of the public to comment on things that are not on tonight's agenda. Not seeing anybody online other than the usual observers, and our one attendee in the room is not running up to the podium currently. So I'm thinking we'll wait for an agenda item there. Then we will bring it back and move on to agenda item number 1. Trevor.
Yeah, all right.
I need to add something. I need to be in McKinleyville by 8 o'clock.
Tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Be like Portville.
Well, let's put us on. Yeah.
Thank you.
That might be a new concept. We've been asking to do that. We should do that. There aren't such things as timed agendas in Robert Rules of Order. They might have a place here. Make an argument. But all right, Trevor.
All right. So, this is to me, it seems a pretty straightforward, simple project. It's actually a project where you wouldn't even normally see it. It's not administrative, but there's a couple of issues. One is, I try and keep repairs out, septic repairs out of the coastal development permit realm. The coastal commission pushes back on that quite a bit, but hits a little bit on that. But because this one is the merger as well, and the county is a merger, so the coastal commission's getting notice anyway. So we just had to include, everything, and it's a pretty sensitive, limited environment. So that's kind of the reason that it needs a higher level of review. So it doesn't fall under the repair and maintenance exemptions. Mergers, even though they tend to reduce development potential, do change the intensity of use of development. So coastal commission considers it development. So just a little bit of background on this project is when the property owner went to repair the septic system, which is still operating but sluggish, as we pump more frequently, it was found that the septic system was constructed on the property to the south, of which the owner didn't own that property to the south. She looked for alternatives for repairs on the property of the house. As I mentioned, it's a pretty limited site. So that wasn't a viable option. Originally, health department said she could do some sort of easement. The rules were there until interpretation of the rules changed. Now they have septic system serving a structure on another property. So she purchased the property to the south, and the health department requires the merger septic system. Because of the site limitations, again, we kind of looked at alternative designs. There's a creek nearby and the steep slopes. Really, the only other place that was flat enough for the septic system was the driveway, and that's really not feasible location. So the repair is designed essentially in the location of the existing system. But I mentioned because it's unstable, I wanted to get a geologist to look at the site. So Roland was available to do that, and so he prepared the report, and so potentially has a conflict of interest there in deciding on the project. So I'll mention that. But he did go out to the site to do a review, and his recommendation is to make sure that the repair lines are no closer to slope. So the original design had the new lines on either side of the old line, and so they're both going to be up slope. So that's included in the conditions of approval. There's no structural changes, so design review doesn't apply. A lot of the zoning, permissions don't apply, setbacks, things like that. I did kind of go through and summarize the restrictions and requirements in the SE zone. All those requirements can be met. I think the one, the leash lines might be within 100 feet of Grand Creek. We didn't actually get out a tape measure, but at least probably horizontal distance, maybe not vertical distance, but horizontal distance. Health department didn't have any issues with it, and there's really no feasible location, and the new lines will not be located closer to the creek. So, you know, we can't really apply the standards to maintenance and repair of existing development like we can that we're new development. But we're new development, this would be a pretty site to develop it. At all. So, so the project can be found to be consistent with the zoning ordinance, general plan requirements, the slope stability requirements that we looked at. We've been working also with the health department on this, so I went out to the site with the health department. So Adam is he's on board with everything. So staff recommendation is for approval. The project can be found consistent with all applicable regulations and requirements. As usual, your options are to alter or add conditions of approval to address any concerns that you may have, delay action, continue to obtain further information, or denial of the project based on it not meeting one or more of the regulations. There's no specific findings for this project except that it's consistent with. So, the staff recommendation is for approval. The conditions of approval are a little bit different than usual, just reimbursing the costs, just proof of the permitting with the health department. The geologist will verify the location of each new beach lines in the field. Incorporate erosion and stormwater runoff control as did if construction's in the winter. There is so the other thing with this is one of the properties is in the city and one of the properties is not in the city. Odd little corner that it's a weird corner. It should be annexed, but annexation obviously is a big process. So we don't want to require annexation before repairing the septic system. The city might look at annexing that whole Langford Road area at some point. So we're requiring that the owner record a deed restriction that they won't protest the annexation in the future because it should be in the city at some point. And that the applicant complete the notice of merger and subdivision compliance, which is this is from the county's staff report. So the county is also currently processing approval. Second question.
Before we do that, Roland, what's your plan as far as recusing?
Since everybody's here, I'm gonna recuse.
Okay. Questions from the commissioners for Trevor? Sorry.
I have two questions. The first question is related to condition of approval 6 on page 7. Somewhere in the staff report, you indicate that even though the two parcels will be merged, they will have two different numbers. That. And let me follow up with, and if they are merged, it would seem to me that would then be either in the city or in the county, still not split. So I don't understand.
It does happen. So we have several instances and it's pretty common. So there's some properties just like on the frontage and West Haven, that intersection. There's some properties along there that used to be split by the city boundary. And there too, they all have two APNs. The city has since annexed Berry Road, and now both APNs are in the city. But originally it was one parcel, two APNs, one in the city, one. There's a parcel on Wagner that it's one parcel that crosses Wagner, which is private, but it has two APNs on either. So you can do it for tax purposes. The land trust property has two APNs, because I think it's assessed differently. So because of the lease between the land trust, the city, it was the lease with the city for the park, that has a separate APN. I think.
Yeah, that makes sense because all that's in the city.
Yeah.
It was just confusing to me how you could do it from the county vis-a-vis the city. And
So the county's gonna tax the value of that portion of their property, the city's gonna tax the value of that portion of the.
And then just a real simple question. I know that the geologist report says that the leach lines will be on the upper side of the existing leach line. But is that shown?
It's not, so
Okay.
that's a condition of approval that Roland either has to flag the area where, the boundary or out there in the field and approve the location.
So neither one of the diagrams is correct at this point, all right?
Can I add something to actually the process? The designer is going to come up with another plan. And I would view that. I'm not gonna go out there with little gate lines or something, or whoever that is. You have something that's done to someone else.
Other questions, some other questioners? Just in the conditions of approval, number 5. So the second half of that is it's conditioned that basically any further development on the county jurisdiction. So, property assessment area will be reviewed by the city. I guess to me that just like and then what? Like the city reviews that they want to do some, like, do we have it? We don't, it's not our jurisdiction.
No, with the county, so it's at least the city would be notified. Maybe that could be worded a little bit differently. I took that wording, we have the application for water outside the city, and that's one of the conditions that the attorney. I took it from, the wording could be, the city shall be notified and given an opportunity to review, maybe is more, so the county should refer anything to the city anyway, but just to make sure that that's. Not that we can necessarily do anything about it, but we could. Well, you need to expand the septic, so she'll need to get a septic permit from the city. So at least we can kind of keep track of changes. Septic. The idea is that any intensification of use might affect septic system. Right, yeah. But maybe it doesn't matter, but I guess my thought is if the applicant or future owner, whoever, needs to increase the capacity of their septic system because of some further development there, that it will come for the city. Yes, it should. So if they're doing, an addition or something that would require expansion of the septic, then yes, city approval would be triggered. So you maybe saying that's not necessary, or? Yeah, I guess I'm leaning towards that that's not necessary. And I feel like it's either not necessary because they will have to come before us, they're increased density use, or
if it, whatever development they're proposing doesn't increase the density of use to the OWTS system, then I don't think that it really matters to the city, like if they want to build a shed. It hurt to put it.
Would it help if there was something to kind of leave it as is, but put additional structures that resulted guest intensification? Because that's really the only thing that would impact us, right, as a city. And like you said, if there's a shed, because as it reads right now, it could be somebody builds a shed, they're gonna have to tell us, we don't care.
Right.
We don't need to be involved, none of them care, but we don't need to add a layer of complexity for the owner, right?
Correct. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So maybe any extension or intensification of use that would increase wastewater flows.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, if it has the potential, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That would increase voice one.
You need to define what those changes would be.
You know, just take your money, recuse yourself. Oh,
Shut up.
it's hard. Really hard. That's right, yeah, they recommend they do.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm good with that. Caveat. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, comments. But I think has kind of been resolved, but looking at a paragraph on top of packet page 17 about the design of the septic system, it's not clear to me whether this is the final design or whether it's not. Yeah, it's like a final-ish design, but still has to have it's on the ground or at least.
Yeah, so either beach on the ground or like Roland mentioned, a design. So with a repair, it doesn't require a full design. So you can see the health department permit in there, and that's just Adam's design that was approved. And so it doesn't have to be more than that kind of drawing. So you know, it could just be Adam redrawing the main permit with the specifying the lines. Or it could be the geologist verifying them, field or whatever makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, the reason I ask is because it might just be a typo. In that first full sentence, it mentions that the geologists will review the final design and or flag the leach field location. But then later, at the end of the paragraph, it says, with the review of the final design, the geologist found the project will not increase. So it's still.
Oh, conditioned on his final review, the geologist found. Let's see, so.
I think again, I don't know what it means in its words, but I was a little bit confused by them.
Maybe it's well as recommended and maybe I'm conditioning the staff. So because you're looking at a slope facility one.
No, look at the first paragraph on the page.
Oh, okay.
And in short, right, it says the geologist will review the final design, and then the final sentence of that paragraph says, with the review of the final design, the geologist found that the project will not increase limits still. So I guess it's just based on those phrases, like they're going to the final.
Yeah, it's so well, but that's what the report says, that if those recommendations are followed and with review, it can be found. So it's kind of based on that wording, and it is a little confusing, but let's see, with their review. We'll just found that it could be found. Geologist determined that it could be found.
But the design's not final, though. I guess my problem is with the first part of that.
Well, I think it's just as long as that recommendation is followed, then it can be found. But so, is there some better wording?
No, I mean, based on some of the comments I've already heard, I think it's clear what's going to happen there.
Condition number 3, I think, kind of cleans that up a lot too. Talks about future tense that things will be done. Right. So the geologist and kind of cleans up that mismatch,
Take care of. My second question 4 is the extent to which, and again, condition of approval number 6 kind of addresses this, but the extent to which this process needs to be coordinated with the county. Like, where are they at? They're processing the CDP.
I was sort of waiting for that to be done. So they can process this because they're only processing the merger. And so they can process that administratively. The city, we don't have administrative CDP regulations, so I have some draft if we want to do that for things like repairs and stuff. So the county, it's an administrative permit, so it's just the zoning administrator approves it, no public hearings. I have seen the draft staff report, it's been done for like 2 months, it just hasn't been signed. So they are, as far as I know, they're done with their process. And it's really just the preparation of the notice of it.
We acknowledge some ways perhaps as a condition of approval that this is pending that. Yeah, I think it's maybe buried in the language by 6, but
We could say shall, we could add to 6, shall obtain approval from the county for the merger and submit it completed.
that's fine.
Yeah, I'm just curious, can you submit this document without having it approved by the county? Can I generate a document, they don't agree to the merger, then I mean, I don't have a problem, but I'm just thinking,
Could you go down to the recorder's office and submit it without county planning approval?
yeah, probably, because
Maybe, I don't know. I would think not, but. Yeah.
I've got 2 more questions then. First is about the deed restriction, and I think I get the intent. I was just curious what the precedent for that is as far as the guarantee that they will not protest annexation.
So, I mean, we could require annexation now, but I think that seems a little onerous for a septic repair because the city, I mean, it should be in city limits. So, because we're agreeing, to have this repair in city limit, it makes sense to. I mean, all it is that they won't. So, in an annexation, if a city wants to annex an area, if a certain percentage of the owners file a protest, it has to go with vote. So all this is saying is they won't protest.
I don't think it is, but is there any potential for that to be perceived as being coercive? I would think it would only get this for. Sounds empty.
Well, that's what conditions of approval are.
Yeah, I guess, okay.
I mean, I think to me, it makes sense. It's good planning. I think, that's what we're gonna do with the water applications. Okay, and that's not even just the city policy, that's lab policy. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
So it's fairly routine, maybe approved by an entity bigger than this one, like LAFCO or city attorney.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I would say that this would probably be pretty standard for approval of a split.
Okay, final question. Thanks for your patience. Is there any environmental or biological monitoring of Parker Creek water?
The city has done some pretty extensive water quality testing on Parker Creek. It does have some issues. The city has not done any in over 10 years. The county does do monitoring. They've been doing it at the mouth of the creek. Somewhere upstream, I'm not sure if it's below Hidden Creek, but Hidden Creek's always been kind of a potential problem. So yes, the county does do regular bacterial monitoring. Definitely where the source area. I don't know about Parker Creek specifically, but I know in the whole Trinidad, West Haven area, they've only gotten 1 or 2. Right. But yeah, no, there are some issues at Parker Creek, but health department didn't have any concerns about this because it's so far above.
I'm done, thank you.
I just have a couple of easy ones, I think, most of them answered. The plans and whatnot that I saw here appear to be not related to the proposed work. For example, the DH permit that was filled out by Steve Septic refers to adding risers and an effluent filter, nothing related to moving leach lines, that kind of stuff. So is there a separate application to DEH that is in some other paperwork somewhere?
Oh, so well, it does, so here it's the two lines, so it is a repair. It's marked as a repair, 1 bedroom, so here, so the septic system is existing, that's what the E is for. And then the new stuff is the 2 leach lines of 10 feet.
Where are you, Trevor? Just so I can.
At the very top of packet page 21.
Page 21, so that
Yeah.
the letter E, you're saying,
Is the existing septic
Right.
tank. The septic tank isn't being replaced, that's what
Right.
the E's for.
Yeah.
But the new stuff, what the permit is for, is the 2 10-foot lines at 4.5.
got it, that's describing what's going to be done now.
And it's just a special requirement.
And they use the rise and the filter, which is okay. Perfect, all right, thank you. Makes total sense to me now. And answered my other question, that the drawings in here are basically of the existing system and not what the new one is gonna look like.
The survey is the existing system, yes.
And that hand drawing then at the bottom.
The hand drawing was the original repair proposed by the health department. This is gonna have to be modified to move those lines upslope of the existing line. Right now they're on their side.
I'm assuming you must be our applicant or representative or,
Yes, I'm Sherry.
hi Sherry, nice to meet you. Aaron, now's a chance, if you'd like to speak to us on anything, you're welcome to, you don't have to. If there's any questions for the applicant, we have our applicant.
Check on here.
Sure, yeah, please, that way the audio recording can get you.
Yeah, I appreciate you all being here today and you thought into this. Of course, for me, it's been a very arduous journey. I originally just had a small septic repair. And then I learned that it might be on the neighboring property, so I had to get a survey, which was not cheap. And then when I found out it was on the neighboring property, I had to get an attorney to try to work out easements, adverse possessions, and then the county changed its mind, it wouldn't accept easements, so I had to purchase the neighboring property. And it wasn't easy to talk them into that, because that was the only solution. I had engineers come out and look at other ways. And then now I have to go through this application process, which is another very expensive and I guess I would just ask that you would consider taking up maybe condition number 2 of number 5 as was thought up. I don't mind being held to, I feel like I'm being held to a higher standard. Those repairs and the septic are held to. And this seems like, of course, I'm gonna comply with all the laws. I'm here, trying to get this permit instead of just fixing it on the side. I don't know that I should be held to even more oversight than the law currently provides by adding number 2. I don't know what the rationale is for that. And my other request would be, I know when you're talking about putting them up higher, which is fine with me. I have 2 pumps at home. I have 2, first I did buy a solar pump, and then I did, my wet pump failed, I bought a solar pump, even that got tangled up somehow. And had to be fixed, and pumps don't always function. Of course, when the electricity goes out, they don't function. So I just would be asked if this could be done in a way that does not require a pump, especially in such a remote area. And especially with tenants where there's not somebody to monitor the pump all the time, I think that could lead to more problems.
But one, I just wanted to say thank you for going through the process of trying to improve your septic system. That's very meaningful to the city, and we really, really appreciate that. And yeah, we heard you on your 2 requests.
I will say I mean, number 2 is really, it's required anyway. It's just, you know, for the city to check the box. But it really isn't necessary because it's required.
We're gonna get a straight condition number 2 as opposed to
Yeah.
5.2. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, did you mean number 5?
5.2, yeah.
5.2. Oh, okay.
I guess just my thought on that after the discussion with Tristan is that because any intensification of use could impact the OWTS system, which is within our jurisdiction, that's why I think that's potentially meaningful to have in there with that caveat that we added in, that it's strictly related to any development that would impact the capacity of the system to process.
What would it?
In theory, yes, but you're the person that owns it now, and I have no doubt that you would, but we also have a plan for the future, right? And for a subsequent owner, that kind of thing. So we have to make sure that there's language in here that just kind of, and because of the split parcel between the city and the county as well, makes it a little more challenging for us to have oversight. Normally we would know about that because it would come to our planning department. It's not.
Language is restrictive. Or it requires as
Could you
little.
come to the podium, please? It's so difficult to hear you back there.
I mean, I don't know if this is something you normally make people put in their deeds, but I feel the law already requires it. You know, I don't know why it needs to specifically go in my deed. I guess, wouldn't the new owner also be required by the law? I mean.
That's sort of what I was trying to get at. I mean, assuming that the county, so say you wanted to add another bedroom. Permitted manner, and go to the county, you would want to do that, assuming the county would then check on your septic system and say, well, it's only size for a 1 house. Upgrade your septic. I assume the county would then contact us.
I would assume so, but I think that's where we are a little bit worried about the referral process and the review process, and would the county know to refer it to the city? Would the health department know it's in the city? I don't know that having it on the deed really helps that though. You know, I'm fine either way.
Wait, having it on the deed does help that?
I'm not sure that it does. I mean, it lets the future owner know,
Right.
but it's not gonna, the county's
The
not.
county's not gonna get it.
The county's not.
Yeah.
So they seem to be really good about that. They got me to you. I'm here quite quickly.
I'm fine. Yeah.
I read this as 2 totally different, distinctly different requests. And I did not read item 2, 5.2 as being part of an agreement on the deed. And I think in my mind, what I was going to suggest is that I was going to make this, instead of 5.2, make it 6. Condition number 6 condition, because they're 2 different things to me. And I think that both of them are important, but the new 6, in my mind, that's just another condition. It's no big deal, and it's not in the deed.
That's fine, and maybe it's something that, maybe it's something that I asked the health department to put in the septic file. Maybe that's where it shows.
So that would be the best place for it.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
That's the itch for me.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like I said, I didn't even think that was a big deal at all, because in my mind, it wasn't attached to the deed, right? It did not run with the land per se. Formally run with the land. That's fine.
So that would be another condition, Trevor, is that
Yeah.
just an administrative advantage?
I mean, I guess we could make it 7 because we already have 6. We'll make it 7, and we'll just ask the health department to put a note in the file,
Septic file.
in the septic file, that would refer any increments to the city.
So let's say I sell this in 10 years and I totally bought them. I go back to tell the new owner that there's this condition number. Couldn't the owner put on the county to fight you guys if something happens instead of on the owner?
That's what it is. So that's what we're doing. So instead of recording it on the deed, we're gonna put it in file at the health department to notify, for the county to notify the city.
Right, great. So it's not a condition on me.
That's correct. And then in terms of. Oh, the pump. So, in talking with Adam, the lines would just be deeper. To avoid the need.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's our purview. Yeah,
So I understand. Yeah, I agree. So let's strike 5.2 and then we're adding 7.
Yeah.
Basically, is that puts the onus on
Yeah.
you to tell the county to put something in the septic file.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, switch rather.
And that comes through which if and when annexation occurs. Or does the county allows that as part of the?
Well, then it would be more obvious. So I think the problem is, you know, if the county, a future owner is going to apply to the county for 476. CMA, and that's a county APN, and so. You know, it's just making sure that that's gonna get to the city. I guess, because I think even if the city annexed it, probably still remain 2 APNs unless they went to the. Had that changed in the state.
but then they would just be going to the city.
And then they go to the city anyway, so it kind of becomes a point, but I don't think it hurts to have it in the file.
Right. Anything else for the commissioners? Formally open it to public comment, although there are no public present other than the applicant. So we'll go ahead and close that back then from public comment. Any other discussion, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion based on the application materials information included in this staff report as amended. And based on public testimony, I find the project is consistent with the city's certified LCP and other applicable regulations, and I move to adopt the information and findings in this staff report as amended and approve the project as described in this staff report and as conditioned herein.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, passes 4-0 with Roland. He recused himself. Thanks and congrats. Sorry I had to go through all this process.
But
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 2, and please don't feel like you have to stay. Tell everybody how to get the heck out of here. Let the noise element is exciting for you. Welcome back, Will. Thank you.
You are now authorized to speak.
Quiet, it's the whole thing. Oh, help with the 8 o'clock poll. All right. Rip.
All right, so, about the noise, I wanted to, didn't want to waste a meeting, so I've got a lot of things on the burners, I almost had some other things ready for you, but this was, all I can get, so, we talked about the noise element at
September.
Okay. So I incorporated your comments from that meeting. I provided a little bit of additional information on the legislative requirements because there's a that I would like to have a little bit more of a discussion of Commissioner Slay's suggestion on terminology. You know, I thought, oh, well, we can just differentiate noise and sound, but then everybody defines noise as unwanted sound, but then they use them interchangeably in their noise elements, which is confusing. So whether it's community noise or noise pollution, so I think continuing that discussion a little bit more. But I did try and change all the references to just general sound. Noise. And then I also provided you with the policies from City of Arcata has a brand new Humboldt County, which is just a few years old. And so if you kind of look at, so those are some other example policies, some I probably already pulled from there, but just to give you some other policies to look at, see what you think makes sense for that.
Right, who would like to start?
Just a general comment as I went through this. That's unrelated to the whole discussion of noise versus sound. But I was wondering if there is something that we should, and I don't think it needs to be an ordinance or anything like that, but there could be some like community directive or something regarding generators. The point being is that under certain circumstances, you could have generator of various sizes, shapes, and noise. And I'm wondering if it would make sense, like I said, so maybe some sort of community advice sheet or directive that might suggest that when you buy a generator, look for the following things in terms of noise. Try to find one that has a low sound level. Or basically something like that, or possibly suggest things like at night, if it's dark, for sleep, is it necessary to run the generator all night long? Can you turn it off? Would you, something like that. Put together something of like a community awareness sheet, whatever you want to call it, that would just provide maybe some little bit of direction and maybe help the community with this often a very noisy environment. And I don't know whether it's worth messing with or not, but even then suggest that work with your neighbors. If you have a generator and you can help them, or just run one generator at a time to help them, and then they can help you or something like that. Timeshare, load share, whatever you want to call them. But it just seemed to me that that's the one thing that comes up when we have a power outage, is that all of a sudden it gets real noisy. Yeah. And I know it's temporary, and I know it's times essential, but maybe there's something that we can just suggest. Because I know you can buy some generators that are very quiet. You could buy them also that are really, really noisy, and I happen to have both. So,
And then running all night too.
Yeah.
In your fridge.
Exactly.
But a lot of people have just automatic ones that just come on.
After that last big storm, the next power loss after that, noise was a lot greater in town walking around, because a lot of people installed those automatic Generac style ones.
But even with those, you can get some of them which are quieter than. And I think also, and I don't want to criticize, but I did the same thing. I think people oftentimes overspec what they think they need. And so they buy a bigger generator than is necessary, which will be louder, most likely. And so, I mean, just maybe some guidelines that people could think about in terms of selection of a generator automatically.
So I mean, like you said, generators are kind of temporary and they're necessary, which maybe makes it more critical, but, you know, on a day-to-day, I think it's barking dogs and roosters are probably more of noise issues. Directives on those.
Well, I see where you're headed, and I understand that. I'm just, in my mind, that's the one thing that will drive people crazy. And I realize it's only temporary. But I guess I'm also thinking a situation too, is we all can envision that we might be out for weeks.
Sure.
So, a comment.
Yeah.
Take it away.
I thought there was a policy in here about education, but maybe that was in the Arcata.
I don't recall seeing it now.
When, just kind of on the same, since Richard brought it up, when somebody gets one of the permanent installation ones, are those permits that come to you, are they administrative? Is it a building permit or not?
Just
They just
building permit.
Just building permit? I'm just wondering, would some kind of an enclosure, at least on 4 sides of it, help limit lateral noise, because we require screening of a propane tank that doesn't make any noise for visual. I don't know if that's something just with that concept might help. I don't want to make it fully enclosed because then it gets into engineering and making sure you've got adequate ventilation for combustion and those types of things. And, I like the idea of actually recommending different types of generators. I don't know that I would be in favor of mandating that because I think that affects the price point greatly. I think the quieter ones, in my experience, are more expensive than some of the other ones. That if somebody just simply needs power, I don't want to get in the way of that to keep, their family staying at home. But I don't know, just an idea, maybe as those come to the building department, we could consider acquiring that. I don't know if it would make a difference either. It would be, we'd find a volunteer that has one of those and see if it really makes any difference before we suggest something that's good.
We could start by at least seeing what the building requirements are.
Where would this fit into the documents that the city was?
I'm not sure it's really a general plan issue.
No, and I wasn't suggesting.
Yeah.
I was just saying that we send out a flyer.
It could be, it could be a zoning ordinance standard. It could be shielding could be a requirement, I think. Because there's already kind of screening requirements, uses and things like that, so. If the city ever adopts a noise ordinance, that's a place for it too, which gets talked about every couple of years.
I don't know how you could do some screening because a lot of generators, especially the noisy ones. They live in a shed.
Yeah.
And they only come out, hook in, when the power sits in the driveway or on the sidewalk.
Generator, it's a tough one.
The used ones are available now, I understand, because of the new systems that are going in. The old ones tend to be noisy. Mine's terrible noise.
What?
I'm turning it off as quick as I can.
I appreciate that particular conversation because all of the language issues aside, I found myself wondering, what are potential new sources of noise? I think that I suppose barking dogs and roosters and generators counts, but what else are we planning for? Don't want to that person behind Murphy's. What other potential new sources of noise might we plan for?
Various commercial uses, I guess, but I think as the technology improve, refrigeration units are a common noise source, but those are probably getting quieter. Trinidad doesn't have any industry, but probably other kinds of commercial uses that could potentially. I think a lot of it's just people. It's a gathering, concentration of people, like a playground, you know, people sometimes get upset about playgrounds because it's,
One could envision, with climate change, people will start installing air conditioners more. And, that would be an appropriate thing to have in a noise ordinance where you could the maximum noise level. Because those
any
things,
HVAC, I mean.
yeah, right.
A streamlined permit for pumps which are near silent on the outside. Those you target the noise compared to a visual system.
Yeah, that's a good point. No,
No, it was good discussion.
I want to derail. I just thought that might get that out there.
Yeah.
Well, if you're asking for comments, comments, okay.
Yeah.
So, we talk about, under traffic noise, which is on page 4 of page 32 of the packet. And we talk about, well, first of all, there's an error there up at the top, the generate wind and brake noise. But we talk about West Haven Drive within the city limits, but why do we leave out Scenic and Patrick's Point Drive? Any particular reason? I mean, they have as much, well, I should say as much, but they have traffic. It can be very noisy. I mean, I see big trucks on both of those streets. And we mentioned Berry and Himalaya, which is one truck 1 week per week.
It's one truck a day at least.
Was it now one truck?
It's always been.
Oh, has it?
It's private. But so to answer your question, this goes back to me when we first reviewed the traffic noise. All that was mentioned in here was Main, Trinity, and Edward Street, and the Saunders shopping center talking about truck traffic. And I was like, well, heck, there's a semi truck that drives up my street at least once a day to go shop. And so now, and then at our last meeting, maybe it was, I don't know who it was like, well, what about West Haven? And then now you're like, well, what about Teammate Drive? And so I think maybe we should just eliminate all of that. And we know that there's some streets that have more traffic or more truck traffic or different kinds of traffic, but I don't, maybe it doesn't even matter that list all those different places. That's an interesting point in this document.
I think where it maybe would be, I mean, so you've got these primary collector kind of streets and, you know, we've talked about truck routes in terms of safety and circulation. And so maybe, I think that's probably kind of what this is getting at is, you know, having designated truck routes to kind of limit the areas where those noises are. But I mean, we're never gonna designate Berry Road as a truck route. There's still trucks on it. Yeah. But I guess I remember the Rancheria, there'd be trucks. Certainly at Patrick's Point, probably not Stagecoach.
Is the city planning on designating truck routes?
At times, certainly that's been planning commission recommendation, yeah. In circulation on the
Would there just be one down Main and
Trinity and
then
Edwards.
and
I
Edwards?
think that the idea would be trying to keep them off Bushland and View.
I mean, that's mostly because of those individuals, isn't it? But they're going to route the trucks right down between the school and the cafe there. I just wonder if maybe just leave this generic about, you know, traffic on the streets.
But I was just looking at the county and the Arcata one, and I don't see anything where they call out specific streets in there. I mean, that would be.
Well, in any city larger than Trinidad, it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like the concept of leaving it
less specific because then it's evergreen as the city annexes potentially, or, you know, locations of road noise change, you know, we don't have to then try and worry about that down the road.
I mean, if the city was gonna do truck routes, it probably wouldn't be because of noise, but because of other issues around traffic. I mean, if the, if the planning commission has recommended that fast, why?
I think it's been my recollection is to push it to streets that have sidewalks and designated as kind of safer pedestrian corridors, right? Not,
Yes.
I mean, there is obviously a certain noise element, right, to truck rumbling down, but I think the speed hump installation on Deep Ocean has probably curtailed that a little bit too, as far as the truck. I don't know, there's a really truck, it was bus, as I recall, was the big concern from some residents on Ocean.
Does the bus no longer swoop through there?
I don't believe they're not supposed to. I believe it was an occasional hiccup that they had to do that if there was a delivery.
I guess now they go over down Hector.
Yeah, they spin around there by the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just move it to somebody else's street.
Right.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Which is unfortunately a town with one in, one out. That's always a good solution, right? Yeah. There you go.
So basically just end it as, yeah, trucks have to drive through town and make deliveries.
Yeah. I like that.
Drive through town to make deliveries to various businesses and residents, right? Yeah, I mean,
UPS trucks.
there's loud cars too. There's cars that are much louder than trucks, right?
Yeah. My neighbor's pickup.
Since we're on this paragraph, that first sentence where it ends, which limits the amount of noise. I was wondering if it was worth changing, instead of limits, saying something effective, which can change the impact of the noise. Because the speed doesn't limit the noise, it changes the intensity of the noise. The noise is still present at 30 miles an hour, a car going by versus, or less than 30 versus 35, is kind of my take. You know, I still, for example, I still hear cars going in front of my house, right? Even though I know they're going slower because of the speed humps that separating out the noise of them transmitting speed humps.
But aren't they louder when they're faster?
Yeah, no, they can be louder, but I don't know, the way I read that interpreted was like under 30 miles an hour, there really isn't any noise produced by the vehicle was my concern over reading it that way. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I just want to make sure, my point is just that under 30 miles an hour, a car can still make noise.
Sure. Like lessons rather than limits, so it keeps the.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's just the amount of noise. Great. Okay. Okay. We'll just keep going down through the document then. Does that work? Is there anything up above? I didn't realize I did. Oh, more logical way to.
Yeah, I've got a couple of these ideas, got a couple of things on the preceding pages, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry, if that's all right with me. I'll just go back and do it that way. It's not a terribly long. Okay, sorry. Heading on the packet page 27. 28. I had a comment kind of related to your ask Trevor about discussion terminology. I did pick up in Arcadis the concept of intrusive noise, and I was intrigued by that definition. So just something as we get down to that, maybe think about that might be, it felt a little bit less subjective, but not quite as subjective as excessive, or I forget what term we had before. Wanton, yeah, just intrusive. I don't know, just comment as we go through the rest of this. Okay. At page 29.
Yeah, I think that in table M1, it makes sense under both decibel and frequency to use sort of more common definitions, like for example, just putting in parentheses for decibels that reflects the amplitude, which is the intensity or volume of sound, and frequency, which represents pitch or tone of sound, just to make the language a little bit more accessible. Something correct is written.
Yeah.
Where did you get your definition? Was that in this? you're counting on them, or you just looked it up?
No, just sort of knowing how to inverse, I guess.
Okay,
Amplitude is intensity or volume, frequency, pitch or tone.
okay.
So.
31.
Yeah, the table there under, well, the second to the last row where it says ambient sound level. It says a composite of sound from all sources near and far, the normal or existing level of environmental noise at a given location. Is it appropriate to change noise to sound?
Yes.
Did you spend a lot of time on this table bouncing back and forth between sound and noise, using that? Looks like it was purposeful. I mean, I noticed in the table, it's like at least times we use noise and like 6, 7 times we use sound.
Well, I meant to change all the noises to sound.
I don't think there's any other noise.
Although I didn't, I think there's like 1 or 2 exceptions where like the community noise equivalent. The definition uses CNEL, I can't change noise to sound in that.
Can you say the average A-weighted noise level? Yes, so there you chose noise over sound.
Yeah, but then the CNEL doesn't make sense. Well, I guess A-weighted sound level, yeah, I can change that one.
Or noise / sound. If it's part of
The one in the definition I can change, yeah.
We also use noise down to ambient sound level.
I mean, usually ambient noise, I think it's ambient noise. But you can't, I do see, you see them both, so, I'm not, this is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think this is necessarily necessary, it's just we were talking about the definition and I think we should try and be consistent. And when I started to look, I saw noise elements are not necessarily consistent in how they use noise and sound. So, and if we used intrusive or noise pollution or community, like if we used a qualifier on noise, then it wouldn't matter if these are noises. So I'm not I just put them in here to make it consistent, but I'm not necessarily saying I think this is how it should be. I was saying we should have that discussion.
Last paragraph of page 31, the between wind and wave, Trinidad also has some substantial, I see you moved that from up above to down below. The kind of the order of the sentence there. And I was just wondering if instead of calling it out so specifically, noise can also come from private residences, recreational activities, low-flying air traffic, emergency sirens, construction, and natural sources such as wind and waves. But I just, like, I kind of flowed a little bit more. Two.
Yeah, sorry, going back to history when I was just formulating a thought here.
Go back to 31.
Yeah, sorry. I still sort of take issue lumping in elementary school as other sort of commercial and quasi-industrial sources. And I acknowledge, property immediately adjacent to it, that there are intrusive sounds that originate from the school, but like thinking about the types of entities that are statutorily required to be listed here, I don't know that it's appropriate to include a school with it, which is, community noise, going back to something I harped on a lot during our last discussion of this.
So what if we put it with the next sentence, noise can also come from private residents?
Yeah, I think it fits better. I guess, I'm leaning into one of my broader thoughts about the entire element, which is that we're really trying to focus on unavoidable. I'm sorry, I guess like avoidable and commercial and industrial noises that are out of scale. Which I think is why we sort of stayed away from listing sources of community noise / sound and noise pollution. And this is why I asked earlier about what potential new noise sources could actually be developed in town. It's like the rest what we're actually trying to plan for here.
So I had a similar thought, Chris, after having gone through the whole thing, was that, and after reading whatever we're required to have in the noise element cited here at the beginning. And it occurred to me that like maybe this body should just determine what we think are potential noise sources in our 5 people's opinion. And if we think that this school is not a noise source, we shouldn't even mention it as a potential noise source. Like, don't even need to mention the wind and the waves as a noise source. Just like only focus on the industrial noises or traffic noises, or whatever else we the 5 of us think are actually a nuisance or polluting our ears in this town. Just like the stuff that's like, could annoy some people, they can come show up here and tell us that we should put it. But if we don't think it's annoying to you, then we should acknowledge it. But maybe that's too extreme. But I think if we could simplify this document and by not having to hash out like, oh well, the school is getting lumped in with this industrial thing. It's just like, well, let's just exclude the school because I don't think the school's a problem. I agree with Chris. I don't live next to the school. I don't listen to the children screaming. Happy screams.
Right. It's also, it's not that it's great, it's just sort of unavoidable community noise.
Yeah.
It's, interesting. I didn't look at it from the kids' perspective. I look at it from an industrial perspective, that they have generators, they have places outside, fans, etc. That's the stuff I was worried about. I didn't even consider the kids' noise because that's nice noise.
Yeah, well, I guess to that end, we should be addressing the generators or compressor units in general, not specific to this school.
You could do that, yeah. I mean,
You're right.
right. You could just say any industrial style type of noise could be represented.
Look, the only issue I would have is trying to simplify all different sounds. There are noise study data in here. And one of the things that showed up in that was natural sounds. So it's like,
Yeah, well, when we were going to get to that, I was going to suggest that we throw out that table of noise study data because I think
It isn't even, you can't really see the one for it, because it's a finger, but
Okay, great.
it is.
because it seems like that's the whole reason that the discussion came up last time. It's like, well, one of the loudest things down there was, down in the pier, right in the wind.
And I don't think we even need to say that though. I guess if we're talking about something down at the harbor, it should be some industrial truck traffic at the harbor. Like we don't need to acknowledge that the wind and the waves are loud at the harbor. And because of that, the ambient sound level is elevated there. But that's kind of, I guess, unimportant compared to semi-truck traffic servicing the dock. So.
Any way we can make this thing simpler, I'm for it.
Well, we don't have to have the various definitions in there, or they could be in an appendix or at the end or something. I think it's worth kind of setting the stage as the noise environment, and I do think it's worth, especially because like 60 decibel, if 60 or 65 decibels is the standard, limit for residential, outdoor uses, and the waves are sometimes louder than that. I think it's worth mentioning that as, the setting. But yes, I do agree that, the government code says, the noise element shall analyze and quantify to the extent practicable as determined by the legislative body. So, and schools aren't listed there, so, yes, I do think that you have the ability to make that determination. I don't think the noise element is a required element of the general plan, but it's not like some of the other elements where some agency has to review it and it's gonna, but you did it. I suppose someone could, a lawsuit or something.
Could we just kind of lump a lot of this into something called human induced noise?
Well, but I think like the point Chris was making is that, you have the environmental noise, wind and waves, but then you have community noise that's just part of the natural background community, like the school, that's not considered a nuisance. So the differentiating between what is nuisance noise and what.
Arcata takes an interesting approach in theirs that they kind of have, it's on packet page 41, they've got that table in too. And I don't know if we could develop something like that. It's pretty general and generic. It just has like a maximum allowable for, these different categories. And we don't have to get into specificity over, what the different things, I don't know if something like that would be. It might be, you've got the figure in Trevor from Santa Cruz, right? It's kind of similar to this table.
I think the Santa Cruz figure is more analogous to N1. It doesn't have the times.
Right, it doesn't have but anyway, some kind of a concept where, because to me, it's, I don't know, but my thinking on this right now currently is that it's more about the decibel level of the noise is what's important, not where it's coming from necessarily.
True, and although, and they're finding, it's also the frequency,
Sure.
Intermittent, some of those kind of things too are an issue.
But I don't know in Trinidad if there's really issues with frequency and that kind of, of noise generation sources. And I don't see it in Arcadas. I don't see it in the counties. That's not a lift they felt was worth carrying to try and get their noise elements together.
Well, there was some discussion about like lower frequencies somewhere where, because they pass through walls, greater distances more easily. But that should show up in your C too.
Which we're not doing because it's effective, right?
Well, I like the suggestion that, okay, well, what are the future noise sources? So what do you want this noise, the noise element doesn't have to be certified by the Coastal Commission. What do you want this noise element to accomplish?
How's it going to be used?
Well, yeah,
It's being
so.
used by a citizen of Trinidad at some point in time, probably complaining about something.
Yeah, so I think it would guide development of a noise ordinance potentially in the future, and I think it would also, it could also guide, you know, it would also guide like review of permits to some degree. So, you know, if you're gonna permit some new commercial use, what kind of noise study needs to be done, or, you know, I don't think we're worried at this point of putting, I think, you know, I was thinking about it more and I wondered, gosh, maybe there should have been more noise analysis on the Year Rock housing project. Really close to 101. Now with CEQA, you're no longer supposed to analyze the environment, analyze the impacts of the environment on the project, just the project on the environment, but NEPA doesn't have that. But I found their NEPA document, it didn't talk about.
Well, it seems to me you got two different kinds of noise issues. If you got some kind of a development that's got equipment or something about the process that creates noise, then you go through a permit process. But then there's you mentioned the rooster, somebody playing loud music. Aren't the citizens going to look for something in the ordinances or the city that, because the neighbor won't cooperate? Or
Yeah.
you can imagine all
I
kinds
mean,
of.
and it's pretty standard to have quiet hours or some sort of limits on noise and party ordinance or whatever it is, barking dogs.
So can you break it down into those two things so that people have a place to go if they've got a complaint that, you know, that they can't satisfy with negotiating with the neighbor versus some development that comes in with something that's likely to be inherently really noisy and irritating.
I mean, but you know, noise can be a difficult thing to enforce. I mean, quiet hours, sure, but like, when does a barking dog become a nuisance? You know, you can't measure the decibels really,
You can, but
but you can. But that doesn't. It's not going to measure how annoying.
Just we are talking more about this, I was remembering another comment I had here, but you know, the elementary school we're talking on the one hand as an educational institution being a generator, a source of noise, it's also listed as a sensitive receptor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And residential, and then you think about the size and the scale of our community, and there is no commercial district, there is no residential district, they are commingled, and I don't see potential build out where that's not going to be the case, so. I don't know, I'm kind of trying to square, how do we have two separate standards and two separate, you know, if it's a commercial project, it has this standard, but they're right on top of each other. I don't know how to mesh that.
I don't think I mean, you could have the same standard for both.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the Chevron station is one that doesn't even have any residences.
But there's a residence right above it, and there's
there's a library right next to it.
you know, the guy right below, there's one down below in the meadow beneath Dale's place, then there's Barbara Snell lives in between the two, you know, so I mean, there's no spot where there isn't somebody co-located, right?
Well, I think from my perspective, I'm confused between the noise element and a noise ordinance. And the element is the policy of, maybe I shouldn't even use that word, but the noise element defines what is considered to be intrusive. The ordinance then gets into the nitty-gritty of what do you do about noise that's intrusive and how you deal with it. So from this perspective, I think we got to keep this pretty top level and maybe not get into a lot of the details as to what a noise generator is or whatever, just define what the requirements are for the community and go from there.
Can you kind of go backwards in the process, figure out what's going to be in the ordinances and things that are going to be regulated, and then just make sure that the lead-in document gets you to those.
Well, yeah, you could reverse it, engineering it.
that would make the one thing fit the other.
Well, but I
would
think-
do it.
I think we're not there yet for the ordinance. I mean, that's come up quite a few times and not sure why it keeps getting dropped, maybe because it's gonna be difficult to enforce, but I think this should set a stage. Again, so this should set the stage for an ordinance and permit review. I think those are the two places that you might use.
I'm just looking at, some of your staff report and then the existing purpose statement that talks about things that noise element shall include implementation measures if possible. This is on packet page 28, item 4 at the top. Noise element shall include implementation measures if possible solutions to address existing and foreseeable noise problems. The noise element shall serve as a guideline for compliance with the state's noise installation standards. So it does, and then you also quoted here from the Governor's Office of Planning that the purpose of the noise element is to ensure that a local planning area limits the exposure of the community to excessive noise levels in noise sensitive areas and at noise sensitive times of day. So it's, I don't know how to do that with this noise element. Well, at a level high enough that doesn't get into enforcement and just kind of offers guidelines. That's how I'm kind of seeing this purpose of this element, is to raise awareness that it exists and come up with some suggested mitigations for ones that we know of, or
Well, I mean, one way to simplify it is maybe, we've got this table, the figure, the graph, and now the compatibility. I mean, since everywhere is mixed, maybe it's just one.
Which table are you looking at?
The one from Santa Cruz, the blue and red one. You're on page 36.
Just interrupt this train of thought for just a second. We list the government code minimum requirements for noise up. Look at the list. We don't want to put all that stuff down. I mean, we're not going to follow this list. If we keep going the way we're going, so do we really need to bring in this government code that doesn't fit this town at all? I think just a little bit, but if somebody reads that and say, oh, okay, so our ordinances and all of this are gonna match every one of these points on the.
Well, your ordinance doesn't have to match it. I think it would be good to include a little bit of an introduction that maybe just talks a little bit about the background of Trinidad, and that these really are not. I mean, because it says shall analyze, shall appraise, identify and appraise noise problems in the community. And I mean, you could, with that description of the existing noise element, say there really aren't noise problems in the community, or they're minor and they're not related to these things because we don't have any. So I think you could kind of address this in a little bit of an introduction and say these aren't issues.
to make sure they're minor and relatively transient and right now.
Well, and that's what you've attempted to do under existing units, right?
Yeah.
But I think to further simplify it.
Yeah, but I mean, you're setting the stage.
Yeah.
And then you've got your chart, which is maybe in the wrong spot, but where is it? Yeah, okay. And then the policies.
I mean, the chart is probably overkill for Trinidad.
Why do you say it's overkill?
But I think to Aaron's point, that all these areas are mixed, so we don't have
Which chart?
the,
Santa Cruz chart, Santa Cruz, okay, sorry.
yeah, all these areas are mixed, so.
They are, but I still think it's important to have reference points for what those should generate.
Yeah.
And what are acceptable, commonly accepted levels of. My point was more just, we can't have one set for this standard and one set for something else, and the commercial is held to a different. Because you can't just look at it strictly through the lens of a commercial development or residential, because they impact each other because of the proximity.
Well, and I think so, these are not noise standards for the uses, but if you were gonna put a use that use somewhere, it shouldn't be louder than this.
Say that again, why would that not be a noise?
So these are not noise standards for those like to limit what those uses generate. They're noise standards for those uses should be located in environments that meet these.
So,
So yeah, so it's not generation and exposure, yes.
So to take your example a little bit further, let's say behind Murphy's, they put in a mixed use. Place. It's got businesses, it's got maybe a motel and maybe housing. So how do you deal with that?
Well, hotels and residences have the same standard.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that would be, I think, a fairly straightforward.
Yeah, but I know, like, where's retail? I don't see, I guess that'd be often.
Business, commercial, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting example, because that property would be mixed use, abutting two different types of single use, residential.
Yeah.
On one side, the Parker Creek side, and then strictly commercial on the other side, and the backside of Murphy's generates noise, with the HVAC, if and that would be a really interesting example to try and figure out.
I mean, I think that's a good example to think about, because I think that's your biggest development potential in town.
Right.
But so how would you want to review?
Well, okay, so in my mind, we've already covered the generation of the noise in that kind of environment with what's already in here in terms of the analysis that has to be done during the permitting process, right? Okay, so then the potential for impingement of noise on that environment is covered by what would be in here in terms of the allowable generation of noise.
That, and it's also the attenuation probably too. So if you were gonna put noise sensitive uses there, you would want maybe put a screen between.
Yeah, that's exactly
houses.
right.
Yeah.
There's some sort of, yeah.
Back in the noise element policies on page 36 and 37 begin to address the.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, so that's kind of, right. What kind of noodle and keep going through?
Sure.
Or try and come to some resolution on what we've been talking about. I feel like it's kind of like an overarching philosophical discussion.
I wouldn't mind following Tristan's suggestion, just cataloging what we consider to be some of the biggest sources of noise, just as a sort of brainstorming exercise. So we sort of have something concrete to think about as we go through, detail the element. That's absolutely necessary, but I'm happy to engage in it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that. The only caveat I had is, keeping in mind that we don't know what future sources will be. And that's part of, I feel that as a more and more of a charge is thinking downrange beyond today's issues for the city, because we're putting in place, God forbid, somebody has to come back to this general plan noise element anytime soon.
And those are sort of separate issues, right? Like I don't know, the noise element requires one, this cataloging of all of the various noise sources, and then 4 is implementation measures and possible solutions that address existing and foreseeable noise problems, if any. So I don't know that we absolutely need to catalog potential. Yes, that's true.
Isn't that the part of, isn't that the purpose of this chart, the Santa Cruz chart?
And I don't know that we need to be specific noise sources. That's certainly a way to interpret it. I think just things that might generate noise would be a restaurant, a commercial occupancy of this and that without having to get named specific roads. That might, right? To Richard's point, yeah, I think that exercise is kind of done as groupings that are in the prefecture. And it includes a lot of stuff that we don't currently have and are likely not to ever have, even with potential annexation, at least in our little stands.
Yeah, I mean. I think like Trevor said, or I think Trevor said, noise isn't really that big of an issue. It's town. And so it's hard, really to figure out how to let some policies to regulate this thing that's like not really a problem. And I guess, I mean, maybe that's also, I'm speaking in my own opinion, that it's not really that big of an issue. And think about someone developing the lot behind Murphy's. If someone was going to put in a mixed use development there, like honestly, like noise is like probably barely something I would be thinking about in the scope of a development of that size. I mean, noise as a commissioner is something I should be considering, but like there's so many other things that are more important than like, wow, this is the noise from this. I live right next door.
I was going to say that's going to be a
differently.
proximity thing, right? I
Right.
feel the same way about.
Yeah, right. And I don't know, maybe it.
Well, you're addressing something like, it's not the mixed use thing on like a spot like that. If somebody comes in and wants to put in an industrial
Yeah,
facility. And in many ways, it would probably meet the requirements. You don't need a lot of septic stuff, One of the few things that would be the issue would be that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not industrially zoned, so it have to, be an allowable use, but I mean, what if it were a outdoor theater or a place that could have outdoor concerts or, something. So I think one way to look at it is, okay, well, there's a lot of sort of standard noise policies and we can include them even if we know we're never gonna. That's the minimum requirements, but I think we also wanna make sure, okay, is this gonna hinder something that we want in town? Or, and is it gonna help something we don't want? The two lenses. It's like a noise, so yeah, like a noise.
Something that requires a noise study.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's good to have it in there in case someone does propose a outdoor concert venue. And have it if you need it.
Well, okay, so we already have that. We have that as a part of our policy here. Right. Am I missing something?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, I mean, I think you've kind of got the basic here, and it is pretty basic. And then, but I also, I included the arcade and the county ones to see are there alternatives there that you like better or anything missing that you like better. I mean, I think for Trinidad, it kind of is what it is. And I mean, I don't think you have to worry about it too much.
What you included from the county Arcata, that's just their policy section.
General policies, I didn't include the text.
Yeah,
The counties is very short, Arcata is quite a bit longer.
okay.
Let's just spin through the rest of this. As we through, and then we'll circle back. Page 33, I think was the next one we were headed to. Or, excuse me, 32. We finished that one. Anything else on 32?
Yeah, this is, I'm clearly hung up on the same thing, right? But the sort of stationary noise sources we've listed here, I think are substantially different types of stationary noise sources. From that government. That should be keeping in mind, right? There's military installations, for example, that we're talking about, elementary schools and the Marine Lab, right? So if there's like a scale of what we have to be considering as a stationary resource, I think it's important. I think that's not true. I just think we need to make a decision about what in fact qualifies as a stationary noise source. Sort of community.
We're talking about things that already exist that you're not gonna change. School, green lab, gas station.
It's other as identified by local agencies as contributing to the community noise environment. What it is in Trinidad. But we could certainly say there aren't any military, industrial, or significant location.
Well, that's not entirely true, as the Coast Guard still owns, still has a facility on the head. And one could argue that if they decided that they wanted to develop that to a further extent, that would be something we would have to address from a noise standpoint. So, that's way out there. That is the one military installation I think we have in town.
I do hear the navigational bells on the buoys.
Yeah, well, yeah,
That's
yeah.
it's military installation. You can see that.
Yeah, the fog with
I think we should just ignore that entirely because the feds are gonna do what the feds do. They will pay no attention.
Well, the coastal zone, well, the noise isn't really a coastal issue. I mean, the feds do have to get approval from the coastal commission.
And I guess the only reason this really matters to me, right, is that we're having a sort of ongoing discussion about sound versus intrusive noise pollution. Yeah. I feel like if we identify something as a quote stationary noise source, then we're taking a stand there that is something that causes intrusive noise pollution. I'm just not sure all of the things listed here.
I don't personally, I don't read that as just a stationary noise source. It doesn't speak to positive or negative of it necessarily.
Well, and that's where I'm talking about the terminology, and I should be consistent, so it should probably be stationary sound sources.
Right. Right, I mean, we're not passing just because they show up here doesn't mean, we talked about the winds and the waves, right? We've listed those potentially and.
But our definition of noise, right?
Yeah, I would.
This definition implies that those are problematic.
Seems like the more we talk about it, seems like we need something qualifying, whether it's intrusive. So that we can use noise and sound interchangeably, because I think it's just too easy to do.
Define that right up
More
front.
clear if we use or intrusive or noise pollution.
I like intrusive. I mean, pollution is like, that's, again, you have to quantify it. Intrusive is an experience. You don't necessarily have to put a decibel level on it. Something to be intrusive.
But so if we took that and let's say we attempted to define that up front, would that change anything that we have here? Except maybe the existing conditions?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of identifying what are intrusive or potentially intrusive noise sources versus what's just the community. for the community sound.
Did I mean, I can read, did everybody get a chance to read Arca's or zero in on their definition of intrusive? It's on packet page 42. The best part of the definition is policy N5, the objective paragraph at the very bottom of packet page 42. Talks about that it's existing from the general, it really kind of, to me, the reason I like this is it calls out that it's different from, it's qualitative and it's different from your background noise, which then opens up the ability to have some discretion over what is background noise. You know, there's a school in town. That's part of our community noise. There's what, you know, I don't know. I just kind of liked it. That it
I like the part about the excessive and intrusive, but that intermittent gets you into a complicated definition. I don't know, I'm trying to simplify things. Maybe you just say that excessive and intrusive. And don't get involved in some of this trickier stuff, the intermittent noise.
like that one might be in there just to kind of protect against something that, you know, there was discussion at council the other night about the siren on top of the fire station. Is it still necessary? It's intermittent, right? And it is without, you know, arguably excessive and definitely intrusive, right? But we all hear it. So I don't know. I
It
kind
is
of like,
necessary.
you can make an argument it's not necessary.
Yeah, I guess you could, maybe.
You know, it's not really the notification method anymore. So I think, I don't know, I see value in that intermittent, leaving that option in there to interpret something that's
Just trying to simplify.
yeah. But I do like the concept of really maybe clearly stating at the beginning of this order, this element that we're really focusing on these intrusive and intermittent sources, and that everything is, the rest of it should be viewed with that lens, and then that might get us, like at me, I'll say, out of the feeling the need to kind of be really specific about some of these sources, right? Because it allows that, it allows room for growth and changes of the community and the conditions as it continues to evolve.
I think I would really, I would define like back to that list of stationary noise versus just striking everything after businesses, maybe just like saying, in addition to highway 101 and other traffic noise, the main sources of noise are equipment such as refrigeration units and or commercial operations. The rest of that stuff, I mean, the gas station would be included in that. I don't know if the elementary school matters, the marine lab, they shouldn't matter. Generators, recreationalists, wind and waves, none of those are.
I would agree with that.
To commercial and institutional.
Maybe just take it don't say equipment such as refrigerator, just say equipment at commercial businesses. Otherwise, you're just pointing his finger right at Murphy's and saying, you have noisy refrigerator.
Well, they do.
Yeah, and one of these days they'll break down and they'll put new ones in, they won't be noisy.
But the criteria, which we say we want to include, says that which one do they fall under? They fall under industrial, manufacturing, utilities, and agricultural. So as long as they are below 70 dB, they're good to go. Right. Normally acceptable.
Except we tested them at 80.
Well, did we?
Yeah.
Well, I was standing right next to it.
Well, I don't know, that's the numbers written down.
Are you back up the Sanders table? Yeah. What are you referencing?
I'm saying that this should be basically the only thing in here, in my mind.
Although I think Murphy's would fall under, well, it's not actually clear where retail falls.
Business, commercial, professional.
Yeah, I'm thinking more there, but
Go
is
up
that
to
more
80.
office?
Well, it's definitely business commercial. I mean, it's a commercial.
Yeah,
And that's also that's exposure and
for
generation.
sure, not generation, yeah.
I mean, that's,
But the idea is that,
when I stand next to it and I hear it, I'm exposed to it. So I mean, that's kind of a nuance that isn't, I don't see as terribly meaningful, right?
Almost one of the same.
It's the same thing. It generates it at 80 dB. I stand at my house and I hear it at 80 dB. Right, it's exposure versus generation. If you're standing right next to it, you're going to read the same value. Right? As you get further away, your exposure is going to decrease, or if there's mitigation, will decrease.
My inference in this chart is essentially protecting these particular categories. Right? That
yes,
you protect residential hotels and hotels from louder sources under these criteria.
so if you were gonna build housing behind there, you'd wanna make sure that
Right.
their outdoor hours meet this table. And that you'd have to screen, if the refrigeration units create that much noise at a distance, then you'd have to put
And
attenuation.
I think exposure is probably the better metric because that's what's meaningful, right? I mean, if you want to buy something that's really loud, if you scream the heck out of it, put it in a box and I don't hear it, like the blenders in Jamba Juice, have at it. I don't care because it doesn't bother me because you mitigated the noise, right?
Well, this does say exterior noise exposure.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
You said, Trevor, that, and table N2 is gone. Right here, Macy.
What wasn't it, yeah,
Okay, yeah, right.
the noise readings, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on 34? Five. Table we've been at exposure, right?
I gotta go.
Right, that's how it is.
I trust you guys are very thorough and very. Listen,
Well, we're not finishing this tonight. You'll get another set.
Oh, shoot.
Nice try.
On page 35,
35.
I'm looking at that final sentence, which again carries a lot of weight, right? The city should protect the community from significant new noise sources. And this is what I think is especially important. Accurate definition of them. Limited things like commercial, industrial noise, and community noise and such.
Yeah, well, I think to Aaron's point, that the definition by the city like data is
It's pretty good.
it's pretty darn good.
Right, if we adopt that definition, I think that sentence is good. If we don't adopt that definition, I think it's.
So new intrusive noise sources.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If we add that in. And then again, I mean, for me, the way I interpret that is the protection comes in the form of the mitigation will require that we put in place, similar to, SFO having to give people new windows because they added a new runway type of a thing. They have to do something to mitigate that noise for their increased. We got those things in here, right? Okay. 36.
Under the goal in O1, the monitoring refers to like periodic or episodic monitoring and not like regular / constant monitoring.
The goal,
Yeah. Could I adequately monitor and regulate noise and minimizing land? Because we kind of acknowledge that we are not particularly good at monitoring. So we're talking about specifically the new.
Well,
noise.
One could argue what is adequate monitoring, and that could be once every 10 years.
and it doesn't have to be quantified monitoring,
Right.
it could just be,
Subjective.
Or
Yeah.
a problem is raised, a complaint, they should
can be,
monitor that,
can be
right?
an inventory.
Would be adequate to address a
Yeah.
concern with the trade, okay?
Fair enough.
I get another one on 36. My old friend programs. Actually, I didn't think that this really was a program. It was more of a policy, I thought. It's not asking to do anything or to keep records, which is what I've always envisioned these other programs would be. I don't think this is intended to do that.
Okay.
Or just the swap from outdoor to community, what was that? What's your thought behind that?
Oh,
And later on the next.
because the ocean and wind can be above 65.
Right, but this is under the heading of new development. There's a subsection talking about new development, which,
Well, if you don't make that a program, then it would be a separate policy.
So it would be, so what it's saying is, if you're gonna build some new houses, maybe down, have to be that direction, then their maximum outdoor exposure is 60. Well, the waves get louder than that, so how is that a standard? So that's where I was saying, so we'd have to define community, so the idea, so maybe then now it's intrusive noise.
you said human generated or?
Human generated.
Yeah, some terms, so it's more that kind of a thing, right?
Yes, that's,
I mean,
yeah.
no, okay.
So maybe, I mean, the table N1 with the definitions.
What page? Sorry.
Back at page 30 and 31. If you want those in there, and they're commonly in noise elements, but maybe we need things like human generated noise, intrusive, maybe we need those definitions instead of.
But these are the, if you could say, generic terms that are used throughout the noise business, right?
Oh, and intrusive noise isn't.
But it's not not a very good.
Okay.
I like Arcada's.
Okay.
Much more accessible definition. Yeah.
Or you could put Arcadis right there.
Yeah, right. It'd be a great spot for it. But are you suggesting, Trevor, maybe then in there, you know, if we need to put the human or outdoor or?
Maybe, and I mean. And maybe we don't need all of these, I mean, if we don't use them,
L1, L10, L50.
yeah, that's one, yeah.
Okay, we can strike that.
Yeah, if we pare down to just that one table or something very similar to the Santa Cruz one, then we only need to really have definitions that support, right?
Yeah.
A table that supports.
Yeah, so I'll search like L max, L min, like if that's not used in here, then we don't need these definitions, okay.
Just had a thought on the issue of human. You know, shielding from outdoor human noise. Thinking barking dog is now, somebody wants to run a doggy daycare as a business in their yard. So if we limit it to the.
Well, should that be in the definition that it's not natural environmental noise, it's still human generated because it's the human they're bringing the dog.
Okay, as long as we're comfortable with that, that's fine. I just was, well, they're dogs, they're not humans, you know.
The rooster farm.
A rooster farm, right? Policy against that immediately. I'm anti-rooster, but, all right, so, sorry, last track. I know, 36, where were we, 37? I lost track. All this, 37.
I know 1.2, we're gonna be surprised when we say this, but I think,
Program or
no.
just a regular?
Just noise created by new or proposed stationary noise sources, and once again, careful about our definition of stationary noise sources.
Could we clean that up and just, you know, intrusive noise or intrusive noise sources and not even talk about new or proposed, just an intrusive noise source?
I guess that's true. The stationary is just one category of the various. Noise, like traffic noise.
Because you could have a non-intrusive proposed stationary noise source, I suppose. Theoretically, right? Is that totally fine?
I'm going down one paragraph. I've circled under program. landscape berm shall be considered as a preferred mitigation option over sound walls. And I just said, like, is that like?
That caught my attention too, but when in my head, I realized, do I want to look at a cinder block wall or do I look at a landscape berm? My preference would probably be personally look at a landscape berm over a cinder block wall every time.
It doesn't have to be in policy,
Right. That could just be project by project, right?
Well,
because maybe there's not enough room for everyone.
Well, it's just preferred though, right?
Yeah.
It's not required.
There's like, are there like grading?
But it does sound like rather specific.
Yeah.
Something that's probably more
That's
specific than it's.
The street light drive one to only consider a landscape berm, but since that's preferred, so let me just go with that. I said, well, what else do you consider?
Yeah.
Well, that you
And
prefer.
technology changes, so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, it's better for an ordinance or something.
do we need in the top paragraph there, do we need to define what senior housing means? We are referring to a facility that is something that is opposed to seniors living in a house. Right?
We got a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
And I did a residential care facility.
You have a definition for residential care facility, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the, yeah.
I don't know, or do we just strike that sentence altogether? Do they need special treatment? Those facilities? I mean, it's.
Well, they can't hear as well, right? So it should be fine.
Thank you for saying it. I was.
You guys are terrible.
I know.
They can just adjust their hearing.
Or is that like some law? Those types of facilities are.
I
You
can,
have that, you know, that sounds like.
yeah,
Like it doesn't like a lot.
And then on that NO 1-2, the last sentence, there was this all existing noise generators, just for clarity, can we call it a different word than generator? To intrusive sources, just to, you know. Yeah. 37. I just had a question on 1.6. The striking of noise from special events and near commercial and residential, and I guess the commercial and residential, my comment just to the commingling and the proximity here, calling those out separately. And then the noise from special events, that is to make this more broadly applicable, was the thought there?
no, it should, so that's just a different format of policy where it's sort of got a title, so that's like the policy title, which we are not using policy title, so special events reduce noise from special events, so it's already in there.
Okay.
I mean, if they're all mixed, then residential covers everything.
Under NO 1.4, it says the city of Trinidad should develop, I get that. That the next sentence said the ordinance shall protect persons. I guess that is okay. I mean, we should have a noise ordinance. Noise ordinance shall have the following things in it, but it was a little awkward the way it was right there.
And can we really have an ordinance that protects them from an existing, a pre-existing?
Well, it's excessive levels. So you could have an existing excessive level,
Okay.
which someone should be protected. Means that someone may have to come in and retrofit something
Okay.
to abide by the ordinance.
But I mean, that's,
Thank you.
that's up to the council to decide ultimately, so should this.
No, I think it's okay. It's just, yeah.
Some 38.
Yeah, just a grammar under the program where it says addressing periodic or recurring noise, just say address periodic.
To Richard's point, the program on 1.4.1. Does the should there need to be a shall? Or
Yeah, maybe that second sentence of N4 should be 1.4 should be part of the program.
I mean, I guess we use shall everywhere else in all the other policies.
Shall as a legal
Right,
mandate.
it's a binding, yeah, but that one. God is not such.
Yeah, and once again, I don't think that in my definition, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like that's.
Well, maybe it's just a continuation of 1.4.
Right.
I like that.
I don't know, maybe even be.
So at this point, Trevor, do you kind of have enough to take that Arcata definition, then take another pass through and then bring it back to us again?
Yeah. And are you, I mean, are you happy with these policies as your framework?
Yeah, I think so. For me, with that goal of kind of simplifying and decreasing the name
Yeah.
identification, the detail sources versus just going to this general, exposure and then mitigation kind of thing being the standard for the community to have, right? Any other comments from? Else, there's no public here, there's no public online. We don't have any public comment. Great. Commissioner reports. So the only thing I have is to talk about December meeting. I don't know if that was a meeting something.
Yeah, that's a good point. We did talk about
Availability
that.
and
I don't have any applications. I could potentially probably have something ordinance wise. Or noise element, but
Cause that
it's the day that's 17.
17.
I'm around, so it doesn't. Also around. If there's something we can do, I'd love to.
Okay,
You know.
okay, so we'll keep it tentatively for now.
Okay. Any other commissioner reports or? The other thing I had is that at the council meeting last week, there were a couple quasi planning related things, and one of them, they were talking about the project. It's gonna come before us for some Main Street additional work happening on Main Street. One of the comments that I made was one that is raised to get their awareness of the law that changed that Chris, you brought up in 2024, I think it was that changed. Regarding the red zones, just making sure they're aware of that so that traffic engineer can go back and make drawings that are in compliance with that, need to be in compliance at this point, rather than paint 15-foot red curb now and then have to extend it by 5 feet down the road.
I don't know about this.
What?
This project.
It's more work on Main Street coming along here to widen the sidewalk on this side as it goes around the corner there. I don't think it's come to yet. It's still in design phase. There was drawings in last week's packet, but
Got a grant for that or something?
yeah, grant funded.
Oh, the sidewalk.
The sidewalk. Sidewalk, side, yeah, kind of,
It
yeah.
also paves quite a bit of other stuff, putting up towards Area Road as well.
Yes, yeah, doing some, yes, some other paint stuff. like
It is horrible.
But anyway, so that was the only thing I had.
Okay.
I just made a comment.
So, and what was the other one? Was there another, you said
Yeah, but it's escape, yeah.
trails? Why?
Yeah, the usual suspects, yeah. But nothing else was really too planning with us, so I'll bring that up. Staff report then, Trevor, how much you got for it?
Okay, so I will just say, I did submit a new AD draft AD ordinance to Coastal Commission, so, and I haven't really, I have talked with, someone at HCD, and I've also talked with the Coastal Commission's liaison, HCD liaison. And so, I don't know if I've mentioned this at a previous meeting, but I could not reconcile HCD's comments on the draft ordinance and I didn't think I could make it work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a lot of this main part of town, the outer edge in particular, where views, infiltration, parking, bluff stability setbacks are all limitations, and we're basically gonna say no ADUs there, except a very limited subset, and you can streamline that, and then everywhere else is just state standard.
And who's directing this?
I drafted it.
But I mean, but as resulting from whose comments?
So I submitted the draft that I had worked with Coastal Commission staff on for
Okay.
years to HCD. And then as I was trying to address their comments, I was like, I can't make this work. I've got to come up with something.
Right, so that document, there's like 30 something comments.
Yeah.
Kind of have
Yes.
those things, yeah.
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 For your ages.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like.
And there's some, the state law changes all the time. And I think we can really simplify it because they're taking appeals on the ADUs away from the code. So there's no appeals on the ADUs. So I don't have to work, because it really made permitting complicated because there were different permitting requirements in the appeal area versus non-appealable area. And so it was getting so, but now we can simplify it because we can treat those areas the same. And so we're just gonna have a limited ADU area where you only get a small subset. Or you could apply and go through a full permit process if you want something bigger, but it's basically gonna be very limited ADUs in that part of town and then state standard.
So that's a good compromise, yeah.
There was an article in the paper today regarding the changes to the Coastal Commission authority regarding housing. And I'm wondering how that's going to affect us. Maybe this is, maybe this falls right in line, but
I don't know if I saw that article, so there's the ADU changes, I think are some of the main ones, but I think, and there might be some other ones, but I think, there's been a lot of discussion about some new, like potential new laws and what the state needs to crack down on, because the Coastal Commission's they've also been producing information showing that they really have changed their tune on housing, and that it's really local jurisdictions have way more control over housing than. So was that in local or was that in time standard?
I'm just looking at it right now. It's a time standard.
I'll look at that.
And this kind of leads you to believe that they are losing a little bit of their control over the whole of housing on the coast.
I think there are some other changes that have to do with multifamily housing and things that aren't gonna be applicable in Trinidad, like the density bonus and things like that. And again, they're not gonna be applicable in Trinidad because of.
Yeah, this says the Coastal Commission last week approved a rule change to make it easier to build affordable housing.
Affordable. That's right. Yeah, the Coastal Commission sent out a newsletter that I did read. But again, I don't think that's gonna have a huge impact on Trinidad because septic density limits that housing, I think 80.
It's also interesting, the number of commissioners which have been,
Pro housing that have been.
that are
Yeah.
pro-development, that are now on the coastal commission, so we'll see what
It's
happens.
been a really big change.
Yeah.
And Liz, did you say we'll see that? Do you have a timeline when we might see that again?
I mean, I could potentially, I have some questions. I'm not sure what order do I mean, I could bring you the draft in December if you want to see it. Or do I wait, make sure we've got, I don't know. Because I've got some questions that might be for coastal commission, that might be for you, might be, so it's a framework. I don't have all the details worked out. So that's potential. I've also been working on implementing like adding these zoning ordinance chapters for the safety, geologic setbacks and stability for us to implement the safety element, and then also to implement the conservation element. So, because I've been working with coastal commission staff on how do we piecemeal our LCP update, because we can't do it all. And so that's one way is, okay, safety element, and here's the regulations and safety element, just add those. So I might be able to get you something on those. I've been working on those. Yeah, other than that, so we're on LCP update. It's interesting talking about the Murphy's parcel. So there, I think there is going to be a development proposal. Coming. Working closely with Coastal Commission, kind of behind the scenes on, and Coastal Conservancy on trail issues. What gave you what's that?
It did sound like, all the history aside on that at the council meeting, that there is some potential momentum and different energy at playing out perhaps.
I hope, yes. I mean, I think the change in staffing on the Conservancy is a big part of that. And I think even though, we felt the Coastal Commission really, their staff report did the city a disservice in how they framed that decision. They really do want the trail. So I think having the Conservancy and the Commission pushing that behind the scenes, I think we'll see. No, but let's get that.
Agenda items. I mean, I hate to do it. We're talking about the noise element and we're talking about noise ordinance. That seems like it might be good timing to begin to look at a similarly sized and located community along the coast, where they have very simple noise. I don't think it needs to be terribly complicated, quiet hours, that kind of, whatever we want that to look like. But I think that would be good. And then what is the will of the rest of the commissioners to elevate the signage master plan and sign regulations and actually begin discussing that? Because I'm seeing signs being replaced and updated throughout town for businesses. I'm seeing new signs showing up. I'm seeing the city going through and having these traffic safety programs, which are adding controversial signs that, personally was a miss for me on that Hector Street crosswalk. I personally am very sad that it wasn't brought to my attention at that meeting, because I would have felt differently about it had I seen it. But, I just, for example, driving on the highway right now, signs are so much more reflective than they used to be. It is almost blinding as I do my 2 a.m. commute down on 101, right? With my heights, I could literally, and I just don't think that's necessary. So I want to make sure that we're having some input over what the city is choosing to buy and put up, how many, I don't think I don't feel reflective. But anyway, I'd like to get into that. Otherwise it's just going to sit there forever.
I'll just add that my first year, maybe I hadn't even been seeing it yet. I did add language about excessive events or whatever the term was. Signage for events or what. Very first. So there's some language about that.
Yeah. And maybe the same. I don't know what the timing is. It's an issue. I love, it's been on there for a while, you know.
It has, and I think it is an important issue. I would suggest just for the next few months, focusing on the LCP grant priorities and making sure we get that money spent and those obligations made. And I think signs could be a big project and time sink for staff because businesses are really get strong about. So maybe it's something we kind of start talking about in the spring for the next fiscal budget year. Might have to get council.
Got a number of the school sign, we got a few come up recently that.
Yeah. No, I think it's, it's a big and important issue, or, you know, you've got the words on the left.
Right.
And,
Well, the sign at the school is totally out of
that's it.
compliance.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but nobody cares.
But nobody cares. Everybody that made a big issue about it has been absolutely quiet, so.
I do still think it gets turned off at night though, which I think is the biggest. Does it?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if it auto adjusts for that, but I think it's been a few times, but might just be as a lesson. It's supposed to be off at night after a certain time.
And it's not supposed to be colored.
But we
The three, wasn't it 3 colors?
No, I thought we allowed some color.
I thought it was
And
just,
it's perfect
well,
reason to have this discussion about signs.
yeah.
I do remember, you know, Police Nichols being in here and coming up with like a new set of guidelines for the sign. Sort of.
Yeah, they were supposed to have like draft something. I don't know if those ever came back, but anyway,
It's not a problem.
yeah. Other than why invest our time coming up with that.
Yeah,
Our
exactly.
old enforcement, right, accountability.
You know,
is the point of
it's on the books right now.
Right,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not being, it's not. in compliance.
Well, but I guess it's there, you know, if it's bothering someone, they want to complain. I mean, that's how so much enforcement happens anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
The city is not gonna go, if it's not bothering anybody, the city's not gonna.
Which I think is fine.
Would it be helpful, Trevor, if I start poking around at some sign
That'd be great.
ordinances that I find?
Sure.
Because I-
I know, I mean, Eureka just redid their sign ordinance and they did a coastal one too. So that would be, might be one place to start. They have a digital sign ordinance and so, yeah.
All right, anything else under future agenda? All right, adjourn. Thanks, everybody.